We should start our evening and this presentation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today, dear members and friends of WISTA Hellas. We welcome to the first autumn online event organized by WISTA Hellas, and allow me to thank you for your support. Today we have with us Pia Meling, the Vice President of Massterly, as a keynote speaker. And we also have His Excellency, the Norwegian Ambassador to Greece and Cyprus, Mr. Frode Overland Andersen, whom I'm allowed to call from now on just by his first name, Frode. He has kindly agreed to make an introduction to us today. Frode has served in Greece since 2019, representing a country that is also a global leader in shipping. And he's a diplomat who considers that the two countries can share common targets and can develop strong mutual partnerships. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Petraki. Thank you very much, LP. And thank you to WISTA Hellas for hosting this event. Just as out of a sort of a fun fact thing, Norway is actually the only country in Europe that calls Greece Hellas.
Thank you for that.
I think that it shows. It's first of all, it's a sign of respect that we call you by your name, but it also shows the close connections which have been between Norway and Greece for many years, and those derive from shipping. It's that simple. Aristotle Onassis bought his first ship from a Norwegian ship owner. So I will make this very brief because I, as the rest of you, came to listen to Miss Meling that has a lot more important things to say than me. But let me make just two short remarks. First of all, today's meeting is at a very aptly time because it's happening against the backdrop of COP26 in Glasgow. And the discussion is no longer if we need to change, but how fast and in what direction in terms of technology, what technology will prevail. We're at the shipping is at the Betamax versus VHS moment. Which technology will we choose for the future? And Norway, as you know, has done a lot of investment and a lot of research into what kind of technologies should be chosen for the future for the maritime industry. There are a host of new technologies coming up. Today we'll hear about automation, which I think is a very promising technology. It kind of underlines the premise of the discussion that we need the new technologies to go into full scale business mode. And that is what Ms. Meling today will show us, that you can actually take automation into a full-scale mode and actually make it work. And I think that's a fascinating example. And being the shipping superpower of Greece, together with the almost as large superpower of shipping of Norway, I think this poses a lot of positives for the future. One thing I would like to underline before I close my introduction is, do not dismiss new technology just because it will not have application exactly within your business segment. The example of Ms. Meling will be from a short sea shipping, rather closed environment. So of course, automation has not been tried and shouldn't be tried yet on deep water blue shipping. The same way as technically we can run an automated car on the Autobahn in Germany, but we don't do it because it's not ready yet. And the same with shipping, but we shouldn't dismiss the technology just because it's not ready for all business segments yet. But I think the example being presented today really shows how far this technology has come in a very short amount of time, and that we now have a real live business case for automation within shipping. And that is no small matter because, there are not many years ago when we could outright dismiss and say automation will never happen in shipping because it's too complicated, it's too dangerous, etc., etc. But now we have the business case before us, and let us examine it and strengthen the weaknesses on face value. And with those words, I think I will leave it. I'll hand back the word to you, LP, to take us further. But thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and making these introduction remarks. It's very important for us, for the two countries, to share ideas and technology and go a step forward. As you said, we are in a very important week and many decisions are to be made, and shipping is set for a transformation. And let's see where this takes us from now on. So let me not take too long and introduce you to our speaker, Pia Meling. Pia, first of all, has been the president of WISTA Norway in the past. So I have to mention that Pia, but furthermore, she has an extensive management experience in shipping and in the maritime industry, in both chartering and commercial management of vessels, and specifically at the leading dry bulk operator Klaveness, while having previously served as general manager of Navcom service provider Radio Holland, as the marketing and communication manager for scrubber manufacturer Clean Marine, as well as sales director for marine products at Wilhelmsen Ship Service. Additionally, as I said, she has been the president, just past president of WISTA Norway. Pia today will brief us on project that the Massterly is implementing, and especially the Yara Birkeland project. I've already had the pleasure of hearing some of the remarks she will share with us today, and very soon you will soon discover how captivating speaker she is. Without any further delay, it is true. 3 years ago, I met Pia and she introduced me to the project, and I was really captured by her. Pia, the floor is yours. If you have any questions, please write them on chat and we will share it with Pia and the ambassador later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Elpe. You're putting the expectations far too high, but I'm really happy to be here talking to fellow WISTA members. I'm still very active in the WISTA community, although I stepped down as president in February. So and thank you so much, Frode, for joining. And all of you, you're welcome, of course, during Nord Shipping in January in Norway. It's going to be cold, but it's going to be a fantastic event. We're going to have lots of fun. And WISTA is hosting a cocktail reception there. So I hope you all consider coming to Oslo in January. Okay, let's get to the point. I need to share my screen, and that's this one. Yep. There we go. Now it's even in slide mode. So the topic of my talk is vessels of the future, not only automation, but also decarbonization, which is of course also the topic in the COP26 this week. So just some quick words about myself. So as Elpe mentioned, I have a career in shipping now, 20 years long career in various positions. And in 2018, I got the opportunity to start in Massterly, which is the best job I've ever had. It's so much learning and so many new, not only new technology, but also new business models and new ways of working, which is really inspiring. I'm also very pleased to be on the board of 4 companies. It's a stock listed company called TICO 2030. That's fuel cells with hydrogen, so zero emission propulsion for vessels. It's a port operator in Norway called Westport. I'm on the board for the ocean portfolio of the Research Council of Norway, and I'm also on the board of a software company called Doolittle. So I get to do a lot of really interesting stuff. And I would just urge all women listening to say yes, whenever somebody asks you about taking on some work in addition to your normal work, say yes. It will open so many doors, and it's not as much work as you think. Okay, and then I get to work with a lot of external communication in my job in Massterly. So I'm responsible for sales and marketing. So I meet a lot of people, and I get to attend a lot of interesting panel debates and so on, which is also really very much fun. But okay, back to what we're doing. Now I'm going to do it the right way. Here we go. It's a bit of a lag. Massterly is owned 50% by Kongsberg Maritime and 50% by Wilhelmsen. And you might know both companies from reputation. They're big companies in Norway, but also globally. So Kongsberg being a leader in automation, but also now in autonomy. Also, they have a digital arm, and they're delivering to defense and aerospace in addition to maritime. Wilhelmsen is very much known for Wallenius Wilhelmsen, which is the car carrier business, the car carrier vessels, 150 of those. But more importantly, they are in maritime logistics and services to the whole of kind of half the world fleet is buying something from Wilhelmsen. So it's a good and interesting marriage here between two very strong companies that have a long history, but also are very innovative and willing to spend time and money on new technology that's not that doesn't really make any money yet. So it's really good to working in kind of a startup company with these owners in our back. And our idea is to start in Norway, but gradually export what we're doing on a global scale with those owners. And what do? Well, our main purpose is really to drive this transition from only shipping stuff or carrying stuff by trucks on the roads today to using short sea container shipping or ro-ro shipping or dry bulk shipping to a larger extent. So meaning that we can really enable this shift from road to sea that has been talked about for so long. There's so much political will to do that because, of course, the road network is limited and there's pollution and congestion and so on. But it's a lot more costly to run ships than trucks on short distance. So that's why we are doing something with the cost and the efficiency and the safety also of this option so that we can actually realize this shift. Because as you see, there's, as I mentioned, pollution, congestion and accidents, especially on the Norwegian roads where we have trucks on summer wheels and so on. But we also have the same at sea. There's a lot of pollution, there's a lot of congestion in port. We've seen the container trade now being totally stuck, in all ports, and people cannot get their goods. And there's accidents at sea as well, of course, and incidents. And a lot of these incidents are actually related to human error or miscommunication or fatigue or some kind of a human mistake. So a lot of that can actually be eliminated by automation. So we see that artificial intelligence and digitalization and automation in our industry now is a lot of buzzwords, but it's actually both enabling this shift, increasing the safety, but most importantly, it's a way of greening the fleet and affording the transition to zero emission, which is more costly than the current fuels that vessels are running on. And automation is not new. Autonomy is not new actually either. In the middle of this picture, you see the dynamic positioning system that was delivered, for example, by Kongsberg 40 years ago. That was put into the market. That is automation at a high level. And autonomous and unmanned various, small vessels has been tested and has been deployed already for a long time. The US naval forces are using unmanned vessels already. So but it's not in the public eye. It's small vessels that are sub the regulations of IMO and SOLAS and so on. And it's a lot of things happening under the surface that we don't see. So what we do in Massterly is now bringing this potential of this technology into more commercial use. Because again, to compete with these trucks, we need to lower the cost of short sea shipping. So today you can only compete on kind of longer distance and high volume. But if we can have a reduced crewing on board vessels that are competing with trucks, or even unmanned vessels with crew working from shore and supporting several vessels, you can bring down this cost curve and you can actually compete at a shorter distance and lower volume, which is an important message for you to understand that this is not really taking any jobs. It's putting more jobs into our industry. It's not taking any jobs from seafarers. It's about replacing trucks. So yes, some truck driver jobs could potentially be lost because of this, but the maritime industry is who will gain on this transition. So we're adding on a capability that's actually not there today. And in Massterly, we are of course focused on the vessel and the trade of the vessel, but we also want to help and provide a good and automated and emission-free loading and unloading of these vessels, because it doesn't help if the actual sea transit is efficient and zero emission if the whole chain is inefficient and costly, and especially the loading and unloading, which is of course much more flexible with a truck, where you can just go from A to B without any kind of loading and unloading. So that's something we're working on, not only the vessel but the whole logistics. And because we have the owners on our back with all their competence and all the employees in those big companies, we can offer customers not only the vessel and the operation of the vessel, but actually also design and operation of terminals, and help with the financing, of course, insurance and approvals and so on. And we can do everything from consulting customers in the beginning, help with a dialogue with authorities on the regulative side, helping select yards, design companies, and so on, to supervising the new building and operating the vessel, including the traditional ship management, which of course is also all about purchasing and certificates and health and safety and repairs and so on. All that has to be done as well, although part of the crew or the entire crew could be working from shore. That's the idea. So again, of course, autonomy it's a very hyped word, and a lot of people talk about it, but of course it's nothing, there's no point in doing it if it doesn't give some real advantages. So number one, lower OPEX, because you have one set of crew can handle several vessels. Potentially you could construct different vessels in the future, especially if you're looking at unmanned vessels. You can actually not only remove the bridge, but all the water, heating, ventilation systems, toilets, emergency equipment. If you start thinking about everything on a vessel that is related to people being there, it's a lot. And you can potentially design smaller vessels, but fleets of smaller vessels that can easily be electrified, for example, and that has extreme flexibility in terms of trading. So you can go at ultra slow speed, because there is no crew that needs to go home for a crew change. There's no limitations basically on how you use the asset in your logistics, which is kind of also opening up new ways of working. So it's not only the crew cost for these vessels, it's also the efficiency and the flexibility that you can get. I mentioned the safety part, that a lot of the mistakes that are done can actually be avoided, either by automation, or actually that the crew on board, which if it's a reduced crew on board, that they actually get help from your anti-collision systems as you have in your car. Why don't we really have that at sea? It's mandatory, and it will be mandatory also, I think, in the future bridge, that you have help assistance of cameras and sensors that can alert you on upcoming collision dangers and so on. But most importantly, we see that if you can bring down the operating costs because you're managing the vessels more efficiently and crewing the vessels more efficiently, then you can actually afford zero emission, not only the technology that is required to install in the vessel, but also the fuel itself. So if you're going to run on hydrogen or green ammonia, it has a cost, it's additional cost to the MGO that you're running on today. So where do we get that money, basically, to invest in that? And this is where it's all connected. So the first customers we work with are actually these cargo customers and logistics operators who want to have unmanned, very small vessels for very specific trades. This is not your business, right? This is very specific, but that's where we start learning. But of course, autonomous is not necessarily unmanned. It can be any degree of automation, and it can actually also be having a full crew, but still automating some processes. So I'll come back to this example of this ferry in Norway that is running with an automated docking, but it has full crew. It's just saving fuel. It's just saving energy by optimizing the way the vessel is approaching the dock and the time it takes to dock. And we also aim to offer services to this big market of ocean-going vessels, somehow helping them to increase safety or reduce operating expenses by supporting from shore. So that's also the aim for Massterly in the next level, next generation, you might say. But we're starting from the small domestic projects that I'll get back to. And most of the stuff that we're doing is actually related to getting this approved, because the technology is in itself not that controversial. It has been tested quite extensively, but putting it into commercial context is more difficult. So these first projects are within the Norwegian maritime authorities, so that makes it a bit easier. And we are now working with them to get approval for level 4 unmanned operation of cargo vessels, not passenger vessels. We don't see that will be given an approval for carrying passengers with no crew, but cargo, yes, under certain circumstances. So we're working with not only the maritime authorities, but also, of course, Class Society, DNV, and a university in southeastern Norway, specifically on the competency requirements for operating these vessels in the future. And that's very interesting that this university has made a course already for shore control center operators, navigators who get an additional training so that they are ready to handle vessels from a remote location. And there's a lot of items being discussed, not only, what happens to the captain when the captain is on shore and not on board. What about the liability? What about the insurance? How do we make sure that we comply with all the local, regional, and international regulations? And we have this principle, which is the same as IMO is always already using for any kind of new technology. It has to be equivalent or better than conventional operations. So it's up to us to prove for every process that we want to automate, everything that we would like to move to shore, we need to prove that it is at least as safe as the current manned solution. This means basically a lot of redundancy and segregation on the vessel, so that if you get a fire in one engine room, or a battery room, you have enough other, fire safe battery rooms that will take you to the end destination and so on. It's driving costs, but it's also important that this is as safe as it can be when we are getting started, because we're going to get a lot of attention on these projects, and we have to make sure that nothing goes wrong, nobody gets hurt in any way. And IMO, as I mentioned, are also working on these global regulations for MAS, which is a maritime autonomous surface ship. It's also why we are called Massterly. They've spent already 2 years on trying to define what they're going to do. But at least now, at the latest working meeting they had, they concluded that instead of rewriting all the rules we have to accommodate for this, maybe we should have a new instrument that covers MAS, and that is goal-based. It's not defining exactly how you do it. It's saying you need to achieve this, and then it's up to you to choose how. So that's at least a good progress. And Norway is very active in IMO work because of these projects that we are undertaking here. So to the projects. This one, Yara Birkeland, is quite famous already without having actually been much on the water. as you can see from this illustration, the vessel is a container vessel. It's 80 meters long. It takes 120 containers. It's fully electric. But it's not only the vessel that is innovative in this case, it's also the container crane, which is also zero emission and autonomous. And the small straddle carrier that you see carrying one container there is also supposed to be autonomous and zero emission. So it's also the port operation is quite ambitious on this project. The vessel is also going to have a robotic arm that will do the mooring. So instead of humans with the rope, there's actually going to be a robotic arm that is finding the bollard and pulling the rope, which is actually quite interesting area of automation, because nobody loves mooring. It's hard work. There's lots of accidents, and actually there's several crew members only job on some vessels. But this is the vessel, how she looks now. She's actually been ready from the yard for a year already, but the port has not been ready. So now Yara is finally getting their port ready with the crane that's been sitting in China for a long time due to COVID. And you've had all these disruptions, but now it's all coming together. They will start testing with the crane at the end of this year and putting this vessel into commercial trade with their fertilizer export from their factory by the end of the year, early next year. And you see these batteries, that's one of 8 battery rooms in this vessel. It has 7 megawatt battery capacity, and that's 80 Tesla cars. So it's quite different, you know, it's quite a different engine room to be in than your traditional engine room. And then we have Asko, which is another project which could potentially be even more interesting, because this is not as specific to one trade. This is a ro-ro vessel carrying trucks, or basically trailers without the steering house of the truck. And I have a little film, if it's working, that you could see how this is intended.
Distributor in Norway has warehouses on each side of the Oslo fjord. In a few years, 150 trailers will move between these warehouses every day. Today, the trailers are transported by diesel trucks on heavily trafficked roads with frequent disruptions. ASCO is now establishing an innovative emission-free transport system. Trailers will be transported by electric trucks across the fjord on battery-driven autonomous vessels. Trucks bring and pick up trailers from port. Terminal tractors equipped with Red Rock's autonomy solution pull the trailers on board. Trucks and terminal tractors charge at ABB charging stations supported by Hegel Battery Bank made of reusable car batteries. Massterly's certified operators ensure a safe and efficient fjord crossing with the unmanned vessel. They are working from a remote operations center equipped with Kongsberg Maritime's world-leading technology. In port, the vessel moors and charges automatically. Drivers can efficiently transport trailers between pickup and delivery points in a complete emission-free transport chain. To achieve its goals of climate-neutral transport and reduce mileage on congested roads by 2026, ASCO has found a way to enable emission-free supply of food to your local store. Welcome to a greener shopping experience.
It's quite cool. This is a grocery distributor only working with trucks, and now they have become a ship owner. And this is the latest picture of the 2 hulls that are being constructed at a yard in India, the Cochin yard, which is state-owned Indian yard. So this is the degree that they have been built. And it's quite interesting. There's one guy in this company, so he started all this, and he could not have done it, of course, without us, basically, because he knows nothing about the maritime industry at all. But it's Cool, it's replacing 150 trucks per day. But this is new. It's a new customer. It's a new business for maritime industry. It was only trucks before, so just remember that. And we have another customer who wants to build small unmanned surface vessels to carry out what's called ROVs, so remotely operated vehicles, to do subsea work, not only on oil and gas platforms, but also offshore wind platforms, and potentially for deep sea mining and new exploration of the oceans. So there's a short film as well here to show you how that's intended to work.
The sea is the future, and it needs intelligent, clean, and efficient solutions. Reach Subsea has a solid history of disruptive technology. Now introducing Reach Remote, an innovative solution for over-the-horizon unmanned subsea operations. Together with our partners Massterly and Kongsberg, we're taking the next step, transforming the subsea industry. Remote control of vessels and ROVs is a natural evolution made possible by technology. We have combined human interaction with engineering and risk management to reach a sustainable next-generation subsea solution. A robust unmanned surface vessel and ROV, fully connected, managed by reliable control systems under human supervision. Reach Remote is capable of performing an unrivaled range of survey, intervention, and inspection services. With advanced tools, sensors, and communication systems, we provide the information needed for accurate decision-making. We are on a mission to deliver competitive and carbon-efficient subsea operations that ensures a safe work environment for all personnel. We welcome you to explore this maritime adventure. The sea is the future.
Yeah, I skipped the last part, but you get the idea. There's lots of potential here. This is also another unmanned surface vessel that carries an underwater drone for surveying the seabed. We're looking at remotely operated tugs with Switzer, part of Maersk. Unmanned minesweepers is a good use case. Why should you want to put people in such a dangerous situation? Or firefighting boats. Why should you want to have anybody really sitting close to these flames and this toxic environment if you can remote control those from shore? This is the ferry that I mentioned that has 36,000 crossings at the exact same port every year. That can be automated instead of all the captains doing it their way, and that's saving fuel. And then we have this passenger transport segment, which is something also growing. What you call smart city ferries or water shuttles is also interesting, where passenger transport can be taken from the roads to the sea around the big cities. But of course, with some safety crew, but not necessarily a captain, perhaps just like an air hostess taking care of the passengers' safety, but not actually navigating. And for all this, we are building up a remote operations center in Norway, which is our first one, where we will assist crew to start with, and then also monitor unmanned vessels on this level 4 autonomous operations. And it will look like this. It's not ready yet. It's being built as we speak. Maybe it will be there for no shipping, I hope. But this is going to be the work environment for captains and for chief engineers that have a maritime experience but would like to work from shore in a job where you can actually go home to your family and have dinner. A much more predictable and easy work environment, but still do your work. Use your maritime skills to do what you love. So we also like to think that we're actually creating new and better jobs for people in our industry. This is my colleague sitting at our demo center that LP has seen in Oslo. And this is also just to remind you that this remote operations center is not only about the safe navigation of the vessel, but actually the whole logistics. It's so much that can be optimized if you are sharing information and planning from production to consumer in a logistics chain, because there's so much inefficiency there today. So we're looking at more of a logistics center than just the remote operations. And what about deep sea? Of course, all this is very specific, as I mentioned, to very much on the short sea, where we can have zero emission, we can have autonomy, we can have remote operations. But adding on with all the competency of Wilhelmsen, where we have 250 vessels under management, and we have a training center in Manila, and we have 10,000 crew members in Wilhelmsen, remember? So by learning from these small, very domestic projects, we can actually bring in knowledge on the deep sea fleet of new ways of working, condition-based maintenance, the transition to low emission and hybrid propulsion, where you need a lot of competency with the crew. That competency could potentially sit on shore, assisting many crews out there to do the bunkering correctly and to make sure that the engines are performing as they should. There's also a potential of offering unmanned bridge for a period when the vessel is actually out there without anything happening, and then the bridge officer can go to sleep and been waken up by the shore control center in case he needs to get back on the bridge. So there's lots of opportunities also for deep sea. So as I mentioned, we can also assist with all this compliance, environmental compliance and reporting needs that the crews are facing now. Is, you know, the lack of crew is an issue. This the competency of the crew is going down, and the access to crew is going down, mainly due to COVID now as well. While the complexity of the vessels is going up, and the extreme complexity of all the reporting required is going up. So that's where we also feel like we can assist. If we could help limit overtime use or keep the resting hours, that's also a good benefit, without reducing any number of crews, of course, but helping them work with the important stuff on board. And as I mentioned, that you can get access to highly competent shore-based crew for this energy transition that we are facing, because it's no way that we can train all the crews in all the different new propulsions that we will see, and all the different new fuel types that we will need to bunker in time, actually, for this to be really safe and efficient. I just wanted to close up with some pictures of zero emission projects here in Norway. Here's two cargo owners that went together and with opposite trades to say give a long contract of affreightment for zero emission ships, and lots of companies wanted to bid on that. And now there's one ship owner that's going to build this with both wind power and hydrogen. Wilhelmsen is also intending to build 2 hydrogen-driven cargo vessels that will carry general cargo, but also hydrogen for other vessels along the coast in Norway. Also, a pure bunkering vessels for liquid hydrogen has been designed. And in the Netherlands, we have this Tesla of the seas, which is a fully electric small barge where they intend to just swap the batteries. Used batteries are dumped on the side, and a fully charged battery put on board, so that the vessel never has to stop and charge. That's also an interesting project. Solar power has been thought about for cruise ships, and finally wind power now for Wallenius car carriers. They are actually going to build this and hope that they can actually use wind power for a lot of their energy needs. So the whole point, of course, now is to have diverse minds thinking together to come up with good technical and commercial solutions. So this is, I think, a great time to have put more women into our industry and people with different backgrounds, so that we can actually crack this challenge together. And I'm also going to end on this saying that I like a lot. So it's not being coward. That's actually the opposite of being courageous. It's just conformity. Just do what everybody else does. So it's time to think differently. And I'm so happy to have met you all here this afternoon. Keep up the great work in WISTA. Keep attracting women to our industry, and keep helping women to excel in what they do, so that we can actually help with this transition.
Thank you, Pia. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm very excited with all these projects. I know they are not all of them, to be implemented very soon. But as you say, we have to start from somewhere. I remember when I first met you 3 years ago, these were just in the beginning of the operation, let's say, of the ideas. But now we are here almost ready. I remember that time the thought of hydrogen as a bunker was just a thought, but now we have vessels, as you showed us, that are being designed. And I think we will all see many changes, and we have to be ready for them. And as you said, it's a very good chance for women to put their input in this and their new ideas as well. Thank you very much. I see I will not ask you any question, as I see we have a couple of questions in the chat. I will read the few of them. So from Eleni Thanopoulou, she's a professor in one of our maritime university, and she's a judge in one of the Norway research programs, I guess, here in Greece. So the question is, how much of the experience of other autonomous systems has been investigated already in terms of impact on the workforce affected through autonomous vessels?
Well, we haven't spent a lot of time looking at other industries, but there was once somebody in the elevator helping you get the elevator to the right floor. We had an elevator operator at one point. I don't think that person is missed, but elevators are still breaking down, and we still have a lot of high-paid jobs in fixing elevators. So I think in all the kind of industrial changes we've seen, we've been always worried about losing jobs, but there's been created new jobs around new technology. And if you start thinking about how many jobs we are creating, not only on board, but of course in the remote operations center, but in all the companies that are providing technology now for these projects for Yara and ASCO, it's actually a lot of new jobs and high-paid good jobs that are created in our industry. So I think jobs are changing. Doesn't mean there's going to be less jobs. And there is, as I also mentioned, like really a lack of crew, especially on the short sea. It's a problem to get enough crew in Norway, in Japan, many places.
In Greece as well, let me tell you. It's the same, yeah. And this automation can be used on the advantage of the crew to making their life easier as well and safer, as you said before. I will go on to another question. I know Pia doesn't have a lot of time. I think just about 5 minutes. So how difficult or easy, and how much time is necessary to develop a culture that accepts and strives for such solutions? Yeah,
it's becoming easier. When we started 3 years ago, I actually got a lot of hate mail. There was many people very upset about the idea that we're going to try and replace some of the tasks that the crew is doing today on board. But I think that has already changed a lot, because we all see that we are facing this decarbonization challenge. That's the huge challenge that we are feeling. And with the quota system coming into EU now for carbon tax, it's going to be very costly to run an emission, to have a ship with a lot of emissions in trading in EU waters. So this is going to really force us into thinking new. And that's where automation also comes in. And I think if you see it as a way of affording this transition and a way of helping this transition, the cultural issues are not there. And I must also say, I have weekly emails from crew members who would like to work for us, who would like to work from shore in a remote operations center, who don't want to work on board anymore. So I think it's being seen as an opportunity and a good job for many.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I think that's a new way of thinking, and we have to work towards that way and prepare everybody for that. Maybe it won't be in 5 years, it will be in 10, 15, but we have to be ready for that. I have another question, an interesting one. What is the total market value of an autonomous vessel, and how this is expected to be increased within the next few decades? I don't know if you can answer that.
Yeah, it's one autonomous vessel does not make sense at all. I can tell you this. It's far too costly. because the technology you're putting on board to be approved for autonomous operation is costly. So it's only when you have a fleet, when you have several vessels, and you can actually have the economies of scale on the operation of the vessel, so that you can have one set of crew members handling 5 or 10 vessels. That's where the economy of scale is coming in. So now we will have 3 vessels, Yara Birkeland and 2 ASCO vessels. That's already more competitive in running costs than the conventional manned version, of course. But the cost of building the vessels with all this new technology is not that competitive yet, and has also received state funding in Norway. And with that help, it is now a okay business case. But this is still not it's still not great business, I must say. So it's only if you can standardize, get a volume, and actually build series of vessels, not just one specific vessel for that trade and one totally different vessel for another trade. It's when we get the scale and standards up, then it will be a good business case.
I don't know if the ambassador wants to add something. I just have to say that, great innovations have to start somewhere. Somebody has to be brave enough and put the money in and make these ideas work. And then the rest, the history will go. As the ambassador would like to say something, please.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I think Pia has made it. I'll just say from a Norwegian government point of view that this is investment cases for the Norwegian government, because we believe that this is the future in terms of global shipping, but we need to cover the costs in the beginning, as Pia just mentioned, to show that there is a business case for this technology when it gets to economy of scale. And we don't do this out of generosity or our blue eyes only, but because it makes economic sense in the long run. So to make some money, you have to invest some money as well. And I think that's the thinking behind a lot of these programs that this autonomous shipping is benefiting from.
Yeah, and lastly, for Yara, the PR effect of doing this project has been amazing. Yeah. And the number of young talented people who want to work for Yara because they've seen this, that never heard about this fertilizer company before, it's actually a lot of value for them. So it's costly to be a first mover, but you also get the reputation in the market of being an attractive employer and an attractive partner for customers.
Very, very interesting, really. I haven't thought of that as a marketing tool. Very interesting. I think we have some other questions, if I may, and we can answer them very quickly. How do shipping stakeholders view projects like Yara? I think we've answered almost this question.
Yeah, but I just want to put a comment to that. It's interesting that this disruption is not coming from ship owners, right? It's coming from cargo owners.
Yes.
Of course, because they don't have the assets. They have not already invested. And I understand, if I was a ship owner and I already spent a lot of money on my sailing fleet, and it's actually paying good money as well, why should I continue putting efforts and energy and money into something that will kind of disrupt my own vessels, right? It's not natural for them to do that. So it's coming from somebody who wants to control their logistics and who wants to have a zero emission logistics, and they don't find vessels. There are no vessels that meet the requirements. So they're like, okay, then we're going to build them ourselves. But it's really interesting because it's changing. The dynamics and who's doing what is changing a little bit.
Yeah, it is scary for us both as ship owning nations, but also you mentioned something that the project is to take cars from the streets, not vessels from the sea.
Yes,
this is a good point.
It's a good point. And it's very, very small, very specific vessels built for a specific trade. So it's not really competing with the vessels, and especially not the vessel types that Greek operators are mainly known for. So it's not, I would not be worried, but it's of course important to take this as a signal that the charters and the end consumers want zero emission freight in the end. And we have to move towards that. If we want to have contracts in the end.
Very good. I know Pia has to jump into another meeting. She's very popular. So let us say our goodbyes. Thank you both very much for being here with us today. It was very valuable information. We might share this with our members if you both don't mind, because the information had here was very interesting and the videos shown were very nice. I already have a request for the videos.
I will send separately. Yeah. And I have to mention that I'm going to go now and talk to WISTA New York. So it's amazing. We have 2 WISTA meetings at the same day, just, you know, back to back. That doesn't happen a lot, but it's great to see that our WISTA community can actually work across time differences and geographical locations now that we can do this online. So that's great.
It is very important. Give them our regards from
I will. Thank
Norway.
you so much. And thank you, Frode, for staying. See you in Oslo.
Thank you, Pia, definitely. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. See you soon back in Greece. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye to all. Thank you for being here with us today. Bye.